All right. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants event. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I'll be your host for today. If you've been tuning in this month, you know that we've started September off in a big way with over 50 live events for classrooms to join, connecting with scientists, explorers, adventurers, and conservationists from all over the world. Here's the website, exploringbytheseat.com, where you can find all the events that are coming up. And very exciting, we're about to drop our October events, which will have a lot of space exploration as well as many other exciting themes for classrooms to join in and check out with us. Well, there's one thing I know about the fall. Well, two things. I know that the leaves change color, and then I know that we're going to hopefully visit Boise, Idaho to check out the Intermountain Bird Observatory and learn about migratory birds and the banding of songbirds and raptors. So this morning, we're going to learn all about the songbirds. We have Heidi joining us today. Really excited. Now, the weather isn't 100% cooperating with us. It's a little bit rainy, so the event will be a little bit different today, but we're still going to learn a lot and have a lot of fun. So let's bring Heidi in with us. Heidi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. It is great to have you back in action with us. We're excited to be in Idaho, and we're looking forward to learn some more about the songbirds.
Yeah, glad to be with you guys today, and sorry the weather didn't cooperate.
All right. Well, I mean, what can you do? Not every day is going to be sunny, but we're going to make it work. I'm going to let you take over for a little bit if you want to tell us a little bit about the observatory and what you're getting up to. And then when you're ready, we can play a little clip. It's about 5 minutes to take us into some of the action.
That sounds great. So my name's Heidi. I'm the education director for the Intermountain Bird Observatory. We're a research group of Boise State University here in Idaho, and we study birds and bird conservation. And normally in the fall, every single day, we get up early, we open our songbird nets at sunrise and get ready to catch and tag these little birds as they're on their way south for the winter. So we set up our nets, we're catching the birds and measuring them and weighing them. That gives us a great opportunity to check on each individual bird's health. It lets us count the birds to find out how many birds there are in the area. That lets us track their populations over time. That's a really great way to conserve birds because we can monitor their populations. And if we see any changes in numbers year to year, we can do something about it. We can start looking into why their numbers have gone down or up, and we can work to protect those species. So, like I said, normally every single day we do the same process. So it's a standardized way of counting birds during migration. We start in mid-July, actually. So some of our migrating songbirds are already leaving, heading south for the winter, starting in mid-July. And we net birds every single day through October. And you'll hear that from a lot of scientists that they do things in a standardized way like this. So we net every single day so that we have the complete picture of what is going on during bird migration. Well, of course, every single day except for today. So today we had a huge cold front come through. It's one of the first cold fronts of the fall. And so yesterday it was 80 degrees and today it started out 40 degrees. We had snow in the mountains. It was raining all night. And so of course we can't net songbirds in those conditions. We have to wait until tomorrow. But this is a great opportunity to talk about and understand what songbirds face during this long migration journey. So some of these songbirds are flying hundreds and thousands of miles or kilometers to get to their wintering grounds. And what they typically do is they'll fly for a night, and most of our songbirds actually fly at night, not during the day. They'll fly at night, and then they'll touch down in the morning, early morning before dawn, in a place that has good habitat. And then they'll stop at that location and refuel. And for a songbird, that means they need to eat a lot and add a bunch of fat to their body. So right now, probably there are songbirds who ran into this cold front. They were migrating last night. They ran into these clouds and rain and dropped down into this area. So you can see right now I'm along the Boise River, which is just outside of Boise, and I'm hearing a lot of songbirds in the trees. So even though we're not netting today, I can get a sense that, yes, there are big numbers of birds migrating through. They flew last night, and then this cold front stopped them. So when birds run into cold fronts like this, they sort of have two choices. Birds can sense barometric pressure. So yesterday, the birds probably knew that this cold front was coming. So if there were any birds in the area that were fattened up, they had the fuel, they were ready to migrate, they probably took off last night in order to escape the storm, and they probably moved farther south. Other birds might have been coming to us from farther north, and they may not have had the fuel to keep going, so they might have had to stop here to refuel. So that's probably why we're hearing a lot of birds in the trees this morning. And so songbirds are always facing this choice of this risk. Do we fly? Can we make it through the storm? Can we get out of here before the storm hits? Or do we need to hunker down, find some food, find some shelter, and wait until we have better weather to refuel and continue migration? So I'm really excited to see what happens tomorrow. We'll be netting birds. We'll be able to catch them and look at their fat stores and see whether they were able to fuel up or not. So that's the quick little bit, and maybe now would be a good time to see what information we're collecting on these birds when we are normally netting them. Emily, should we show off your bird first, Emily?
I have a ruby-crowned kinglet.
Awesome.
So she's, I'm saying a she. I don't know if they can respond, but
They're muted, but
okay. You guys can guess among yourselves why she's a she if the name is ruby-crowned kinglet. So some of them have a ruby crown.
Yeah, so we can tell she's a girl because she doesn't have this little ruby crown. Kinglets are one of the smallest songbirds that we catch up here. They weigh about 6 grams, which is about as much as 6 M&Ms. So they're very, very small. And Emily has already put a little band on this bird's leg. Let's see, there you go. You can see her little band. So it fits kind of like a bracelet on her leg. It has a 9-digit number, so that identifies her. If we ever catch her again, we'll be able to read that number and say, oh yeah, I remember you. You're number 452. We caught you last year. So that's our hope, is that we get to see her again, or that another scientist gets to see her again. So should we let her go, Emily? All right. You guys will get to watch her fly away. Okay, ready? Here she goes. Oh, that was fast. Cool. All right. Let's go see what other birds we have. So it looks like, Eric, are you done processing your bird? Nice. So Eric here has a Assen's finch. Is it a young?
An adult female.
Oh, nice.
Has a molting feather right there.
Nice. Cool. So you guys, yeah, finches are feisty, so they have really strong beaks for eating seeds. And so sometimes that means they like to nibble scientists' fingers while we're banding them too. Can you spread that wing again, Eric? So this female is growing a new feather. Do you guys all see that new feather growing in? So just like you guys are losing your baby teeth and growing in adult teeth, she is losing feathers and replacing them one by one in her wing. So she can replace her feathers and still be able to fly because she only grows a few at a time. So anything else you want to show us on her, or she's ready to fly off? Oh yeah, nice. So here's a little pin feather. So you can see this little pin, this little fuzzy spot. Hopefully the video's working. That dark spot is where the feather grows. It's like a flower bud. So the feather is blooming out of that pin as the feather is growing longer and longer. All right, so let's see. You ready to let her fly? Let's see what she does. There she goes. Cool. All right, do we have one more bird and then I can... All right, we'll check out another kinglet. Is it... Oh, sure, yeah. We'll follow... This is our other size, Matt. We'll follow him. We weigh these birds in little canisters, little tubes. We stick them upside down head first. They've never been upside down in their life before. 5.8 grams. All right. And then we take them right back out of the tube. And
Feather on your beak.
nice.
There you go.
Cool. And weighing them is the last thing we do. So she is ready to fly after this. Okay, ready? Oh, look at that. Hey, lady. So here's our little kinglet. She hasn't realized she's free to go yet. We'll give her a little poof of air. So we have 10 nets set up. to catch these birds. And I don't see a bird, but I'll show you guys the net. They're called mist nets because they're very fine, like mist. So let's see if I can show you. So here's our net. You can barely see the mesh on that net. And so this net, as the birds are flying through the bushes, they can't see it very well. And so as they go along, they run into the net and it forms a little pocket down here. So when it makes a pocket, the birds sit in that pocket like it's a little hammock. And so that allows us to come along every once in a while. We can take the bird out of that pocket and take it back to our banding station like you guys saw before. So maybe I'll walk to one more net with you guys, and then we'll head back to the banding station to see if our scientists caught any more birds. And Jesse, I'm not keeping very good track of time, so let me know when it's time to do questions or. All right, cool.
Fantastic.
Go to this next net. And maybe I'll flip the camera around here in a second and show you guys a view. Our site is along a ridge in the mountains, and it goes north-south. And that's really important because during fall migration, birds are moving from the north to the south. So they can follow this ridge, and it allows them to stay in some nice high mountain forest habitat. And let's see. No birds in this net. So I'll switch you guys around so you can see the net, and then we'll go take a view of some mountains. All right, so here's our long net stretched out, and no birds in it. Did you get any birds, Emily? Nice. All right. So Emily has a bird in a bag, so we carry them in soft mesh bags, cloth bags, and that allows them to wiggle around as much as they want, and they can move around freely. There you go. So once we check out the view, we'll follow Emily back to the banding station and see what she caught. I did check 10. Yeah, there wasn't anything. Yeah, cool. All right, so I'm gonna take you guys up this view. All right. So this is the view north of us. And you guys can see, I'll try to point here. So here are the really tall mountains, and there's forest up here. And that forest has all those cherry shrubs, just like you guys saw on this mountain. And then down here in the valley, this is Boise, and it's more of a desert. We only get about 13 inches of rain a year. So you can see it's very dry in the foothills. And then all of a sudden you switch to this really beautiful, lush forest habitat with all those cherry shrubs. It's moving from the north here. They're following the ridge, they're coming to us. And then after they get nice and fat, they have lots of energy, then they keep going and they fly farther south. So it's a beautiful morning up here. We're a little bit later, I think, than most, earlier than most of you guys. So it's just a little bit after sunrise here. It's 8. Oh, hang on, Joe, you're muted.
There we go. So a great little summary there to see some of the birds being banded, to see those mist nets in action, and just how fine they are. And as a bird, you would not see that if you were flying from tree to tree in the forest, and then a little bit of that landscape there. So Heidi, there was one part that wasn't shown in the video, but I know the students always are interested in, is when you see a researcher blowing on the belly of the bird. What are they doing when they're blowing on the bird's belly?
Yeah, so it looks a little strange when you see us doing it for the first time, but we're blowing on the bird's belly to part their feathers out of the way. And underneath the bird's feathers, they have skin just like us. But on birds, their skin is actually so thin that it's see-through. So as our scientists are blowing on the birds and moving those feathers, we can check underneath and we can actually see the bird's muscle and fat stores. So I was talking about these birds refueling and getting fat for migration. So for a bird, they can't carry a snack with them like we can. They can't pack a lunchbox to school with them. So they, in order to have the energy to migrate, have to eat a bunch when they're stopped and add a bunch of fat, and that's their energy that they get to burn. So when we're blowing on the feathers, we can see a bright orange color if the bird has any fat, and they usually store it up on their throat and then a little bit down on their belly. And they do that so that they can still be streamlined and fly really efficiently, and still have room to carry all that fat. And then we are also checking their chest muscles. So the muscle on the front of their belly, those are the muscles that power the flapping of their wings, especially the really strong downward flapping motion that birds have to do to fly. So we can actually tell, just like on humans, if you were to look at your arms, you could tell how strong you are. We can look at the bird's chest and tell if they have really big, strong muscles ready for migration or whether they're not ready to migrate yet.
All right. Very, very cool. So on a typical day, a nice, beautiful, sunny day, how many birds can you expect to catch in the morning, and roughly how many species might you see represented?
Good question. So we net for 5 hours every day, and we tend to catch anywhere from 50 to 100 birds on an average day. But sometimes at our station, we can get up to 400 birds. So if it's a really big migration movement, we see huge, huge numbers migrating through. It depends on the time of year. So each season, we catch about 60 different songbird species in our nets. This time of year, what we're seeing is probably about 10 species per day. So, and this is a cool time of year. We're seeing a mix of different migrating birds. So we have migrating birds that nested here in Idaho, and they're heading really far south for the winter, places like Mexico and Central America. And those birds are almost gone. So they started their migration journey a while ago, and we just have a few of those species left, things like warblers and buntings. Now what we're starting to see is birds coming from north of us, moving south, and some birds that actually might stay here for the winter. So things like white-crowned sparrows that nest in Alaska and Canada come through this time of year. Yellow-rumped warblers, which are a species that often stay the winter in Idaho eating juniper berries. We're catching a lot of numbers of those. Species that eat seed or fruit. So our insect-eating birds, they've already started to clear out because this cold weather isn't very good for insects that they need to eat. Our seed and fruit-eating birds, they can take their time. They can go a little bit slower. So right now we're kind of seeing the mix of the last few insect-eating birds and then the big push all of a sudden of all of our seed and fruit-eating birds.
All right. And I bet some of the most exciting moments are when you catch a bird either banded by the observatory or maybe somewhere else in the world. That must be pretty exciting.
Yeah, we love getting recaptures. So this year, actually, we're waiting to find out. We caught a northern saw-whet owl at our owl banding project with a band number that we don't have in our database, so we know that some other scientists banded it. We coordinate all the band numbers with the United States and Canada, and then also any migrating species in Mexico. So we all share the same numbering system. So that lets us get in touch with the bird banding lab or the bird banding office and find out who banded that bird. So yeah, we're very excited to learn where that bird came from and how old is it. At our station, the most common recapture we get is a bird that we actually banded ourselves. And that gives us great information. If we catch it within the same week, we can look and see how its fat is changing over time. We can look on its chest and see its fat stores. And we also weigh that bird so we can tell if it's gained weight. That gives us really important information about the habitat. So if there's lots of food available for that bird, we would expect that when we recatch it, it would be much fatter than it was the first time we caught it. If the habitat isn't that great for that bird, maybe there's not enough food available, we might see that bird fatten more slowly. And so we'll see that their fat stores haven't changed very much. We also get a lot of good information about if a bird returns to the site, that means that it likes this area. So that means this habitat is good for that bird. That species is relying on that habitat. So that gives us good information as scientists when we're looking to target how can we best protect these species. We can look at what type of habitat they need and work specifically to help that habitat, preserve it and make it better to help those birds.
All right. Very cool. Great to hear about that collaboration, with science and multiple countries, and so much information that you can gather about the ecosystem as a whole, not just the birds. So very cool. Very great science that you're doing there outside of Boise. So I think we should do a Kahoot quiz. I've got a quiz ready here for the classrooms to take part in. Now, we just started doing these quizzes in September, so it might be new to some of the classrooms. If you have one-to-one technology like a Chromebook or a tablet, you can play right at your desk, or your teacher can load it up at the front of the classroom for you. You can shout out your answer to put it in. Or worst comes to worst, you've got no option. Well, you can still play along at the front of the classroom and shout out your answers. So I'm going to share my screen here. We're going to bring up the Kahoot. Let's see how well everyone was paying attention today. So the pin number is going to pop up shortly. And then we'll go from there. Hopefully we'll see students starting to join us. All right, there's the pin for today, 642-3616. We'll give a few moments here for some students to come in and join us, or for the whole classrooms to come in and join us. There we go, starting to come in now. Remember, it's going to be 4 questions. Each question you'll have 20 seconds to answer. The correct answer is pretty important. The quicker you can put that correct answer in is good as well. However, if you put in the wrong answer very fast, well, you got nothing. So have a think before you pop in that answer. We'll give another few seconds. I see students coming in. All right, still trickling in. All right, I think we can kick things off now. Here we go. Question 1 loading up in 3 seconds, 2, 1, and we're off. So where is the Intermountain Bird Observatory located? Was it Montana? Was it Idaho, South Dakota, or Nebraska? Where was it located? All right, people were definitely paying attention. That's good to see. The majority went with Idaho, outside of Boise, Idaho. Very cool. Looks like Rodney Schuyler is holding down the leaderboard. Let's see what happens after question 2. So where is the band placed on the bird? Was it the tail, the wing, the leg, or the beak? Where is that band placed? So that, well, it doesn't bother the bird too much, and then it can be quickly checked by a scientist if it is caught in a mist nest. All right, again, overwhelmingly, we went with leg. How has our list changed? Olivia has taken the lead. Let's see where we are after question 3. What are some challenges migrating birds face? Was it long distances? Was it weather? Was it finding fuel or food? Or was it all of the above? What are some of the challenges those migrating birds are facing? Distance, weather, finding their fuel, or all of the above? All right, a bit of a trick question there. Any one of those answers is correct, but all of the above, all of those things are challenges that birds face when they are on their migration. And that's just some of them. I'm sure maybe we'll talk a little bit more about some other ones, Heidi. There's lots of challenges the birds face.
Yeah.
Olivia's holding down the lead, but anything can happen in the final round. Final question. Why do they blow on the bird's stomach or chest? Was it to see how much fat they're carrying? Was it to see if the bird was male or female? Was it to find the age of the bird, or was it for fun? Because the birds are ticklish. Why are they blowing on the bird's stomach, their chest? All right, overwhelmingly to see how much fat they were carrying. Great job, everybody. Let's check our final podium. 3rd place, Rodney Schuyler holding down that 3rd spot. Zombie Abigail holding down that 2nd spot. And Olivia holding down that top spot. Great job, everybody. Thanks so much for playing a little round of Kahoot with us. Always fun to have that little extra interaction before we get into a little bit of Q&A action. So I'm going to stop that screen share there. What do you say, Heidi? Should we meet some classrooms?
Yeah, sounds awesome.
All right. Anyone who's tuning in via YouTube, you know you can use the comment section. Let us know where you're tuning in from. But for now, let's get started with some camera classrooms. So, oops, that's not the right list. Let's fix that there. There we go. Where to go? Let's go to Miss Spears' group. They're hanging out with us in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Let's bring them into the call. Hey, Pennsylvania, how are we doing today? All right, awesome. Who's got a question for us?
Carlton, stand up and come close to the speaker.
Yeah, come nice and close for us.
Right there you go, right here. That black circle is the speaker. So go ahead and ask.
What kind of birds there are in Idaho?
Yeah, what kind of birds?
What kind of birds in Idaho? Well, a lot of different kinds of birds. So this time of year, and this is a species that we share with you guys over in Pennsylvania, yellow-rumped warbler. So they're a species that actually has a little yellow patch of feathers on their butt. That's what they're named after. And they're a small little songbird that comes through this time of year. They're a really cool species because they eat insects during the summertime. And when their babies need lots of protein, they're getting those insects to feed those babies. But then in the wintertime, they can switch over what they're eating. They still will eat some insects if they can find them, but they specialize on eating fruit. So they'll actually eat juniper berries. And scientists have found that yellow-rumped warblers in the summertime, they have very short intestines because insects are very easy to digest. And birds are like backpackers. They want to save weight wherever they can. So if they don't need those extra intestines, they don't want to carry that heavy weight around. So they have short intestines in the summertime. In the wintertime, they grow longer intestines so that they can digest those hard to digest juniper berries. So this time of year, yellow-rumped warblers are growing new intestines to get ready for winter. And that's a species that lives all across North America. So basically wherever you guys are, I bet you have some yellow-rumped warblers.
All right, very cool. Nature is so awesome. That is such an amazing adaptation to be able to change the size of your intestine depending on what you're feeding on during different seasons. What an amazing adaptation. Miss Eldridge's crew is hanging out with us on YouTube, and they're wondering what's the largest songbird species that you've tagged?
That we tag? The largest birds that we catch in our songbird nets are usually woodpeckers. So they're not technically a songbird, but we catch northern flickers, which are a really large brown woodpecker species that lives in North America. The largest songbird species is actually the common raven. They don't even look like a songbird, but we don't tend to catch those guys. They're too smart.
Very cool. Yeah, that mist net, ravens are pretty big. I think that mist net would be in a little bit of trouble with a raven, but maybe it could.
Yeah.
Okay, where should we go now? Chalk River, grades 6, 7, and 8, hanging out with Mr. Shattuck. Let's bring someone into the call with us. There we go. Hey, everyone.
What type of bird is your favorite?
What was the question? What type of birds?
What type of bird is your favorite?
Oh, my favorite? That is so hard to choose. I work a lot with songbirds and I work a lot with hummingbirds. So those are my two favorite groups. But I also have a soft spot for the owls that we catch. So we study saw-whet and flammulated owls. So two different owl species that are really tiny. So today I would say those are my favorite because I'm looking forward to maybe this weekend getting to see a few of those. But I have too many favorite birds to pick. They're all great.
All right, very cool. What a cruel question to ask. No, I'm just kidding.
It's like, what's your favorite? Who's your favorite kid?
Exactly. All right, very cool. Miss Rasiga's group is in Smooth Rock Falls. Let's bring them in live with us right now. Where are they hiding? There they are. Hey, Smooth Rock, how are we doing today? Oh, can you grab the mic for me? There we go.
Okay, my question is, why do songbirds fly at night and how fast do they fly?
Really, really good question. So we don't have trackers small enough to know for sure how fast songbirds fly, but based on looking at where they started and where they ended, we can calculate that some can fly as fast as 30 or 40 miles an hour. And they fly at night for a few reasons, we think. So at nighttime, air temperature tends to be cooler. And you would think in the fall, oh, it's already cold, you don't need to worry about that. But these songbirds, it's like running a marathon, so they're getting hot. They're working really, really hard. So flying at night allows them to have the coolest temperatures possible. Also, the air currents at night are calmer. So during the day, the sun is warming the air, and you have warm air rising and cool air falling. You can have cross breezes. And at night, those tend to calm down. Last night, we had a huge cold front come through, so it was actually very windy all night. But in general, nighttime is better for that. And then lastly, one of the main predators of our little songbirds that we're studying is hawks. And hawks are diurnal predators or daytime predators, and they migrate during the day. So songbirds can choose to migrate at night, maybe stay a little bit safer from those predators that are looking to eat them to fuel their own migration.
All right, great question. And speaking of the night, that leads some hazards. We talked about a few hazards birds face, and those lights from buildings can definitely be an issue that can confuse them. And buildings in general aren't necessarily great when birds are migrating or moving around.
Yeah, that's one thing you can do at your house is turn your lights out, especially during fall and spring migration. That can help birds see and navigate and not get lost.
Yeah, there's
buildings.
Last year on World Migratory Bird Day, which is coming up in October, we talked to someone who works with something called Birdcast, where they can forecast when birds are migrating over which areas. So you can check that website out and know at certain times when to keep your lights off and help those birds as they're making their way south. Okay, let's grab another question here. Let's go to Miss Michael's crew in Glenview, Illinois. I'm going to bring them in here with us. There they are. Hey, Glenview.
Hi. Okay, Owen has a question.
I have a question. Why do you weigh the birds upside down instead of right side up?
That's a very good question. So these birds that we're studying are wild animals. They've never actually seen a human before. So we can't ask them, hey, can you please just stand on the scale and don't fly away? And so our trick for getting them to stay on the scale long enough to weigh them is to turn them upside down, because in their whole life, they've probably never been upside down before. So it gives us just a few seconds where that bird is like, whoa, wait a minute, what's going on? That we can weigh that bird, and then we turn them right side up again. But that little moment where they haven't figured out that they can get away is the moment we use to weigh those birds. For hummingbirds, we can't turn them upside down because they have such a long beak. So we actually just lay them on their back, and usually they don't fly away. They can't figure out that they are free yet. So yeah, it's just a little trick we use.
All right, very cool. Different strategies for different birds. Where do we need to go now? We need to go. There they are. We've got this strong school hanging out with us, some sixth graders. Let me bring them into the conversation here. There they are. How are we doing today? Oh, can you grab the mic for us?
Good, how are you?
Good.
During what time of the year do you catch most birds?
During what time of year do we catch the most? Actually, right now, usually, because like I mentioned earlier, so we have the really long distance birds and they start leaving early. And then we have the shorter distant birds coming from the north that are just starting to get here. So right now, since we have both types, both groups of species, we're seeing really big numbers. This time of year, we're also seeing our most abundant species. So the most common bird we usually catch each year is ruby-crowned kinglet. I think in that clip you saw, the very first bird Emily banded was a ruby-crowned kinglet. So we tend to catch, of about 5,000 to 7,000 birds that we catch each year, about 1,000 of them are usually ruby-crowned kinglets. So there's a lot of them coming through right now.
All right. Well, we have time that I think we can do a lightning round and swing through our classrooms again to see if they have a follow-up. So we'll start off with Mr. Shattuck's group this time. So I see someone already waiting front and center.
How much fat can a yellow rump warbler carry at once?
Oh, how much fat?
Yeah.
So about a gram or even more than a gram. And that doesn't sound like much. So a gram is about the same weight as an M&M or a Skittle. But a yellow-rumped warbler only weighs about 10 grams. So our tiny little, ooh, and I'm getting even more rain, so I'm glad we're not trying to net birds right now. A tiny little 10-gram warbler can add up to a gram of fat, so a huge percentage of their body weight. It's pretty impressive. I still remember a few birds. One was an orange-crowned warbler. I caught it, I banded it, I looked at its fat, it had no fat, and it weighed about 8.5 grams. The next day, I re-caught it, and it weighed 10.2 grams. So in one day, like, I think I calculated it was like 22 hours, it added that much fat. So it's amazing to know that these birds can forage and find food so quickly and efficiently that they can add fat that fast.
All right.
I always wish, these birds basically get a free trip to Mexico. They eat as much as they want, fuel up, and then they just can go and get all the way to Mexico for the winter. I'm pretty jealous.
All right, pretty cool. Heidi, I see the rain's picked up, so if there's somewhere you can go for a little bit of cover, feel free. You don't have to
Sure.
stand out. If there is somewhere for cover, absolutely take some cover.
I'll go hide under a tree.
Perfect. Let's bring Miss Michael
not too
back in. There's our group in Illinois. You guys have another question for us?
Of course we do. Here's Lydia.
Excellent.
After you ban the birds, do you track it with a special machine, or is there another way that you would track it?
That's a really good question. So for our songbirds, they're really small, and we're just starting to get technology that is lightweight enough that we can actually track songbirds on migration. So there's a network called the MODIS network, and there's tiny, tiny little radio transmitters that send out a little ping signal. So it just goes ping, ping, ping to radio towers. And biologists across the continent are putting up these radio towers to detect those birds. For bigger birds, we actually study a few different species where we can put larger trackers on them that actually send us a GPS signal 24/7. So things like our long-billed curlews, they're a larger shorebird that lives in North America. And we have a little backpack transmitter we put on their backs. And once a day, it sends us their exact location. So I hope someday that the technology gets small enough that we can track songbirds in that level of detail. But for now, we have to rely on these small little transmitters that just, if a bird flies past a radio tower, we'll pick it up. But if it doesn't fly past a radio tower, then we can't track it. So we actually just put 10 of those tags out for the first time this year on yellow-breasted chats and gray catbirds. So those are two species that we're hoping to learn more about where they go for the winter, probably somewhere in Mexico, but we don't know yet. So yeah, someday the technology will be small enough we'll be able to track all the birds all the time.
All right, very cool. Let's go back to Mrs. Spears' crew in Pennsylvania, see if they have another question for us. Looks like they do.
All right, go ahead, Aaron.
Okay. Who's the fastest bird that you ever catch?
Yeah, who's fast?
Fastest bird that I've ever caught. So we actually, at our station, we catch and tag peregrine falcons, which are the fastest animal in the world. So we get to see them. We probably catch less than 10 a year, but we get to see a few every season. So they're very impressive birds. They can dive at more than 200 miles an hour, which is pretty crazy. Yeah.
All right, move over cheetah. That is pretty darn fast, and you don't want to be a pigeon on the receiving end of that dive.
Yeah.
Very cool. Mr. Sega's crew, do you have another question for us? I'll bring you in. Nice in front.
Yes, we do.
Awesome.
What's the rarest bird you've ever caught?
Oh, I think I missed that one.
What's the rarest bird you ever caught?
Oh, the rarest. Well, so if you talk to any bird bander, the most exciting birds to catch are the ones that aren't supposed to be here. So sometimes we catch birds here in Idaho, which is really far west, that shouldn't be west of the Mississippi River. So we've caught blackpoll warblers and Cape May warblers that are usually an East Coast species. And that usually happens when a big storm comes and the bird gets lost. So sometimes we do see sort of lost birds that we band them and send them on their way and hope that they find their way eventually.
All right, great question. Let's go to Strong School, 6th graders, see if they have one more question there for us. Here comes someone.
Lace, you have to go right. Ask your question. Go ahead.
What kind of birds do you usually get?
I think they answered a lot of that. Lace wanted to know what kind of birds you usually get, and but I know you've already answered a couple times. We also had somebody ask how the fat is actually measured. Is it by size or by color or whatever?
Oh, good question. And yeah, sorry, it's starting to rain harder, so it's harder to hear you guys. So for the fat score, birds have a dip in their throat, kind of like the dip that we have here, but it's a lot bigger. It's actually formed by their wishbone, and it's called their furculum. So we're looking at the fat in that dip, and then down on their belly, we're actually looking at how much fat covers their intestines. So believe it or not, when you blow on a bird's feathers and look, you can see through their skin and you can see their intestines. So we're scoring it visually. We're looking at, do we think their furculum is 5% full? Do we think it's 2/3 full? Is it overflowing more than 100% full? And so we score that just based on sort of 5 categories that we put that fat into. And same on their intestines. If we can still see their intestines, then we know they're very skinny. If it's just a huge pile of fat covering their intestines, then we know they're really full of fat, ready for migration.
All right. Well, we're going to squeeze one more in. I can see someone up at the camera at Mr. Shattuck's crew in a nice pink shirt or sweater. So we'll let them get that last question in.
What is the hardest bird?
You gotta go real loud.
What is the hardest bird to catch?
You gotta go real loud, Shelby, like yell it.
I missed that one. Sorry.
Cat.
I think it was the hardest. Was that right? The hardest? Yeah. Is there a species that's hard to catch? Can they get out? I'm curious if some of them can work their way out.
Well, so for our songbirds, it just depends on our net that we're using. And so the net that we pick has a pocket that is about this deep. So the hard birds to catch are birds that are bigger than that pocket. So things like northern flickers, and sometimes hawks during the day are chasing our songbirds and they'll get caught in our songbird net. They're a little harder to catch just because they're big, so they can more easily get out of that net. But other than that, with songbirds, the nets are just sort of waiting there passively, so we're not doing anything to try to catch them. So there's not really any that are like super easy or super hard. In our hawk trapping station, which if it stops raining, we'll be doing a trip up there later today. It's a lot harder to catch red-tailed hawks and golden eagles because they're a little more wary. So they're looking around and paying too much attention. So it's harder to trick them and get them in our trapping station.
All right. Well, very cool. Yes, that's at 2 o'clock today, 2 o'clock Eastern. Hopefully, fingers crossed, if the weather cooperates, we will see some of the raptor banding, because the whole process is just so cool from start to finish. If not, of course, we'll have some footage ready from a previous year, so we can still check that out, learn about it, and then go from there. And I always think back to my experience. I've only been bird banding once and misnetting, and it was a cardinal that we caught. And my inexperience in holding it got a nice little nip from the cardinal. So I always remember that very unhappy cardinal that we took out of the misnet, and yeah, just not happy with the whole process. But yeah, that was so great today, Heidi. Thank you to the classrooms who joined us on YouTube and sent in some questions. Of course, thank you to our camera classes. It's always great to have you here and live with us. And Heidi, thank you for braving the weather. I know it's probably not super pleasant out in the rain, but we're grateful that you got out for us today. And we'll see what happens this afternoon.
Yeah, hopefully. We'll keep checking the radar.
All right, excellent. Well, let me bring in our classrooms one more time so they can give a big wave as we wrap up. There we go. Hey, everyone. Good to see you. All right. Thanks, everyone. We are signing off for today.